When it comes to everything fantasy football, you have to ask one question. Don't you deserve a fighting chance? And now, welcome to Fighting Chance Live with your hosts, Kevin Tompkins and Scott Fishbowl 9 winner, Gary Haddow.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into Fighting Chance Live. I am Kevin Tompkins of FightingChanceFantasy.com, also FightingChanceFantasy.com, my good friend, my compadre, Mr. Gary Haddow. I didn't call you vivacious, but just there. Gary, my friend, how are you?
I feel like that's just a dig. The shine is worn off. I went from SFB 9 winner to not making playoffs. Wah, wah.
I don't have any somber music to play because, we kind of just saw it like maybe an hour ago, but we'll just have to roll with it. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But let's introduce our guest, my good friend, 1/5 of the Fantasy Besties, 1/2 of the Fantasy Magnets, my good friend Jared Berry, Fantasy Coach JB on Twitter. Jared, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on. This is exciting. I've been looking forward to this since you texted me last week. Get to hop on with you guys. I love watching it, and now I get to be a part of it. Thanks for the opportunity, man. Happy to be here.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah, brother.
Gary, I get it, man. You didn't want to make the playoffs because you just wanted to let other people have a chance. You're a nice guy. You wanted to share the wealth. I know. I've had
my 15 minutes.
Yeah, so
I benched a bunch of guys last week just to make sure.
Perfect.
Exactly.
You told CMC not to play.
Yeah, rest that shoulder out, man. But for those of you not on the loop, I mean, Gary Haddow is the defending Scott Fishbowl 9 champion, but this year, sadly, for everybody involved, did not make the playoffs this year. So, Gary, say your piece. Floor is yours.
I missed by 40 points, so that kind of sucks, but it is what it is. CMC, shot me in the foot. But to everybody that did make it, like, total congrats. It's a wild race because from here on, you are now pretty much playing a championship matchup almost every single week until the finals, when you actually are playing a massive championship against like 20, 25 other teams. I don't even know what it is this year because there's so many more teams. But dude, the one thing I can say is go for upside from here on, because you are playing with points, you are playing to win, and you have to be, I believe, top 2 in your division for the next 2 weeks. And then if you didn't get a bye, and then after that, you are just shooting for the moon and hoping that you win on the final play of the season, like I did.
Yeah, I mean, it was a wild ride, man, Gary. I know, it's just honestly life-changing. I mean, just that video last year of you in your living room that Teresa took was just absolutely fantastic. But I will say I made the playoffs. So 2 champions, 1 pod. The dream is still alive here.
You say 2 champions, 1 pod. I still wish that we could just do 2 champs, 1 cup, but I get it.
Yeah, I have a little bit of PTSD, not going to lie, from my younger days regarding Don't
worry about it. We're not talking about anything.
No,
we're not doing anything.
If you know, you know.
Is football this week? We should talk about football this week.
Yeah, we just got off of the ending of week 12 here. I mean, sponsored by Trace McSorley's Deep Ball. We're coming at you with some week 13 preview here. So the smoke is literally just clearing here on week 12. But let's get into week 13. Gary, why don't you take us into the early slate? There is no Thursday game. So let's kick that off here.
All right, so we got Cleveland at Tennessee. And Titans are favored here by just shy of a touchdown. Man, Cleveland looks like both backs are going to be startable no matter what. I don't think that's really a question. My question, though, for JB is Jarvis Landry. Is he somebody that has regained your trust, or is he still a fringe player?
I guess it depends on the weather, right? Because those 3 games, the 3 games that we saw before this one, he did nothing, but that's because they didn't pass the ball. They were playing in wind and rain. And this week in nice weather, you saw him be a piece of that offense again, and a valuable piece. So I do think that this offense is a run first, a run heavy offense. They're going to get both of those backs involved, but they do have to throw the ball sometimes. Even if Baker's only throwing the ball 20, 25 times a game, they have to throw it to somebody. And without Odell, it's going to be Landry and it's going to be Hunt. You want to try to trust Hooper, but you can't. He's not seeing the targets that I expected him to without Odell there. So I'm going to trust Landry. I'm just going to temper expectations and just, think of him as kind of a volume play, as a PPR wide receiver that's going to get his 5-6 catches and hope that he gets in the end zone.
Yeah, I mean, I'm nervous about it. I had him on my bench in a couple of leagues, shot myself in the foot there, so that kind of sucks. But I want to know, Austin Hooper, Kevin, are you going to be trusting him?
I mean, you can really trust him only so much. I mean, what after the first 6 tight ends, they're all really lumped into that mess of week to week viability among streaming tight ends. So, I mean, they've got the Titans, so that's not a terrible matchup. Certainly can exploit it. So I would start him if I had to. I mean, I have to. I have Mark Andrews in a bunch of leagues, and Austin Hooper is a guy that people don't seem to want to roster, kind of like a Trey Burton, but just seems to kind of lie in the weeds. And he has weeks where, he'll finish among the top 12, but doesn't get a lot of the credit for it. So I'll happily start Austin Hooper. You just got to live with those 3 for 30 weeks, but will get you a touchdown more often than not.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you have him, you're probably starting him because you don't have a better option. That's kind of what it comes down to. On the other side of the ball with Tennessee, I mean, Derrick freaking Henry, like what an amazing game last week. It's just Derrick Henry. Winter has arrived. You know that because Derrick Henry is going off, running over people like a Mack truck. And AJ Brown, I mean, there's no week I think you could ever sit AJ Brown. He is literally one of the few players in the NFL that is a single touch away from just fantasy glory on a weekly basis. And it's beautiful to watch. The dude is a beast. And especially with Denzel Ward most likely out, that just makes him an even better piece. So with the pass catchers, are you going to trust? I keep saying trust. Are you interested in Corey Davis or Jonnu Smith? Probably is the only other 2 options you'd be thinking about here. So JB, we'll go with you.
Yeah, I'm not a Jonnu guy. So Corey Davis is the other option in that passing attack that I do like. I think that he has a great role in that offense. It's not a heavy passing attack offense, but when they throw, it's AJ Brown and it's Corey Davis for the most part. Corey Davis has scored double digits PPR points in every game he's played except for one. So he's a guy who you can trust. I know you didn't want to use the word trust again, but he's a guy you can trust. Yeah. He's been a PPR machine. He puts up double digits, and he's their red zone guy. Yeah. So he's a guy that in this matchup, especially, if they're going to put focus, and that's what a lot of defenses do. They focus on A.J. Brown. You talk about how explosive he is. So if they're focusing on him, it's Corey Davis that's getting the single coverage, and he's been taking advantage of it. I like him this week, and I'll have him in my DFS lineups for sure.
I feel like Corey Davis is just vintage 2020 at its finest, if not almost 2019, a la Devontae Parker, but just not quite as good. Jonnu, I just want to stop there real quick because I wasn't a Jonnu guy going into the season. I was thinking about that this past week in our off-season shows, just talking to Kevin about, like, look at his targets. Like, look, they're just terrible. And it's crazy. He started off red hot, and anybody that took him felt vindicated. And then he seemed to fall off around week 6. So I don't know. I think that they're going to start getting him more involved. I know he tweaked his ankle a couple weeks back, but I do think that they're going to probably be utilizing him here down the stretch, even though it's really the Derrick Henry show. So with those 2 pass catchers, with AJ Brown in mind, Kevin, Ryan Tannehill, what do we do with him in this matchup?
I mean, this matchup here, it's tough because Cleveland is going to get Myles Garrett back. So that certainly adds another wrinkle. That added pressure. Myles Garrett's probably the best pass rusher in the AFC right now. So with that all inclusive, with that offense, you're probably banking on about 280 and 2 touchdowns with Tannehill. I mean, that's a solid day. He has fallen off a little bit since his pretty decent start here. When Jonnu was doing well, when, didn't have AJ Brown, when Corey Davis was really going off. So, and just another note about Jonnu Smith. I mean, he's had touchdowns the last 3 games, but his entire fantasy output's been buoyed by those 3 touchdowns. I mean, he's had double-digit points, but you're talking that's over half of his output. So, certainly tough to trust there. But Ryan Tannehill, I mean, I don't hate him as a streaming quarterback. It's just you have to know you're not getting the upside that you probably had, and it was very noticeable when Taylor Lewan left when he's out for the season with a ACL injury. His drop off. So it's he's a streamer.
And real quick, just to add to the Jonnu Smith smokescreen, you noticed, Gary, you mentioned how he came out really hot and then he kind of fell off the cliff. The falling off the cliff coincided when Corey Davis came back. They used Jonnu in the red zone because they didn't have Corey Davis. And then, like Kevin mentioned, these last few weeks where he's scoring those touchdowns, one of them was on a freaking end around. I mean, if you want to rely on your tight end that you're starting to score a rushing touchdown for you to get in the end zone, I just think they're going to use him to block even more with Taylor Lewan out. He's not going to be used in a capacity where he's getting a lot of targets, and that's why I just don't trust him.
Right. Yeah. And Anthony Firkser is the one that's getting close to a 15% target share in that offense among those tight ends. I mean, 2 targets, 6 targets, and 6 targets is Jonnu's last 3 games. And like I said, buoyed by those touchdowns. So he's really, really tough to trust, even in a kind of a growth position.
The one thing that makes me a little bit more optimistic about this offense as a whole is that they just ran a gauntlet of Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, Chicago, Indianapolis, Baltimore, Indianapolis, and now they get Cleveland, Jacksonville, Detroit, and I can't even figure out who their Week 16 game is because my internet is going super slow. But that looks like a pretty good slate of games coming up here. So
Green Bay.
Right. Somebody else Henry's going to run all over. Yep.
So
that's happening.
There's some room for that offense to do its thing and have Derrick Henry still doing it. But let's move on to the next game, and we're going to go to what looks like an ascending Las Vegas Raiders team at the hapless New York Jets. Man, I don't even know what to make of the Raiders right now. They just got their asses handed to them like so badly. And it looks like Josh Jacobs is probably going to be out this week with an ankle. Maybe it's still a toss-up, but it looks like there's a good chance he's going to sit against what looked like one of the juiciest matchups that you could have against the Jets. So in lieu of all that, what the heck do we do with this whole offense? Who's the back to play here?
Go ahead, Kev.
Yeah, I mean, it's Devontae Booker. I mean, it's all good. It's Devontae Booker. I mean, Devontae Booker has done really well. We're thinking about his days with Denver and how he was basically just a satellite back. And then nobody really saw this coming. We're wondering, what are they really doing with Devontae Booker as kind of a retread? But I mean, he's revitalized himself as kind of that spell for Josh Jacobs, who has a little bit of standalone value. And now if Josh Jacobs is out, it's Devontae Booker. And, if the Jets do one thing, it's they can actually stop the run. So that does kind of hamper Booker a little bit. But I mean, Gary, you said ascending Raiders. I mean, it doesn't get any lower than what they had last week. So, I mean, you're technically right. They are the ascending Las Vegas Raiders because, but
nowhere to go. But if you lose to the Jets, you have officially done worse than you did against the Falcons. Let's be real. Even if you lose by like 1 point.
Yeah, which if you're being honest and you're looking at the Jets' remaining schedule, I mean, this is a game they could absolutely, now that they have their pass catchers back, that they could absolutely win. I mean, they go at Seattle, at the Rams, Cleveland, and at New England. This is the game they're going to win if they're going to win a game. So it wouldn't shock me if they did. But yeah, Devontae Booker is a back end RB2 if Jacobs doesn't play.
Yeah, and the Raiders were so Jekyll and Hyde for the past 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you saw them come out against Kansas City and put up a good fight and almost beat the defending champions for a second time. Yeah. And then they come out and lay an egg against Atlanta. So, I mean, they only put up 6 points last week, didn't score a touchdown. So, yes, they're an ascending team, but which one are you going to get this week? You got to hope that they play fired up. I'm looking at this as an angry John Gruden, an angry Derek Carr. And with a banged up backfield, maybe they're just going to air out this passing attack, Gary. So you asked who we like in this offense, and I write a weekly article for Razzball.com, and it's a Sexy Flexies article. And one of my Sexy Flexies this week is going to be Nelson Aguilar. And that's because I think they're going to air it out. I think Carr's going to want to get this offense right. And I think the Jets are a team where they can do that, and they could put up points and just make a statement that, hey, we're not the team you saw last week.
And that makes sense. I completely agree. And I'm just going to put us on a tangent here. I don't actually, did you tell us where we can find you online? I think we might have skipped all that with all the Scott Fishbowl talk. Well, normally we do that with an introduction.
Yeah, Kev mentioned the two places that you can catch me on podcasts, but I do write for Razzball.com. I do a weekly article there. I do a weekly podcast, Fantasy Magnets podcast with Wes on the Fantasy Impact Today network. And then, of course, the Fantasy Besties with Kev, Coop, Linda, and hopefully Loop that we go live every Monday night. So spread myself around, man. I love interacting with this. I love being able to just talk fantasy football, whether it be writing an article or talking on a podcast. It's great, man. So I'm enjoying every bit of it.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you. And I'm sorry that was an oversight on our part. We were a little too overzealous there. So I agree with you on the Aguilar thing. I don't really know if you're playing any other pass catcher other than, Darren Waller's sitting, you're starting him no matter what. Like, that's just not even a question. So we'll move to the other side of the ball, and that's with the Jets. Man, Frank Gore looked like he could have had a little bit of something, at least just as a baseline for a fantasy, dart throw RB3 flex type thing. Any faith in this to repeat, JB?
It's a volume play again. I mean, the Raiders, people look at the Raiders as a defense who's bad against the run, but they're really not. If you crunch down at it, they're above middle of the pack in allowing rushing yards. It's just they allow a lot of rushing touchdowns. So when you look at Frank Gore, he's a guy who scores rushing touchdowns. He's not a guy who's going to put up a lot of yardage on you. So if the Jets, like Kevin said, has a lot of passing options and a lot of weapons that if they do click and get into the red zone a couple times, Frank Gore could certainly be a guy who punches one in. So I think he's a viable low-end flex play. I don't think he's anything more than that. He's still, 65 years old.
For sure. So, Kevin, walk us through these wide receivers. What the heck are we going to do here? Because they seem like they have some talent at wide receiver. It's not going to blow your socks off, but they look solid.
I mean, they're fantastic. I just want to add one more thing about Frank Gore. That's a 60-year-old RB2 this week, by the way. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about the air yards king of New Jersey, Denzel Mims, Brashad Perryman, who we know can go deep as well. Sam Darnold is back, and it was really kind of curious to see how they were going to operate with all three of those wide receivers if you're adding in Jamison Crowder too. And Jamison Crowder only got 5 targets last week. So with those guys healthy, with actual options on the outside, dare I say, this could be something that they're going to prioritize working the outside with those guys. So I love Denzel Mims going forward. I think he's going to be their one going forward. I think Brashad Perryman is an upside. I mean, both of these guys are certainly wide receiver 3s with upside. Crowder, he's a wide receiver 4 play, wide receiver 3. So they're all startable in certain instances, but I think the Jets, I think they're just in we don't really care mode. Sam Darnold's going to be able to get some passes off, and if they're gonna win this game, if they're gonna get off the goose egg, it's gonna be with a passing game.
How weird is it that we're talking about a winless team with 4 viable fantasy options in their offense?
Yeah, 100%.
And 3 wide receivers that on most teams, they all have a viable role. It's not as if it's Braxton Berrios or something and Chris Hogan. Like these guys are like Denzel Mims had just so much hype coming into the season. So it just sucks that he landed on the Jets. Hopefully soon enough, we'll be seeing what this team can do with a real head coach, but who knows?
And a quarterback, Trevor Lawrence or whoever. Yeah.
Yeah. I still think that Sam Darnold's a good quarterback. I think we're going to see the Sam Darnold renaissance once Gase is gone. But
yeah,
but will it be on the Jets is the question.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we'll move on to Jacksonville at Minnesota. Man, this line is Minnesota by 10 right now. So
that's wild. I couldn't believe it when I saw that.
Which is more wild, that or the fact that Gardner Minshew is still being benched for Mike Glennon?
Healthy Minshew being benched for an overgrown mozzarella stick.
Don Flamenco from Mike Tyson's Punch Out. Yeah, I mean, it clearly shows. I mean, I would say Minshew is definitely the better option of those quarterbacks, but they don't want to win right now. They want to get a chance at what's his face Fields from Ohio State. So, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, St. Doug is his days are numbered. They just fired Dave Caldwell. So you got to figure that he's probably next. They're probably going to give him the season. But yeah, there's going to be some turnover in Jacksonville, and I don't think Gardner Minshew is going to be part of it either.
No, probably not. Hopefully they don't win too many more games. I mean, I can't imagine they're going to win many, but they get that high pick and see what they can do and with a full reset type thing. But James Robinson, if you're thinking of not starting him, just stop playing football, fantasy football, because he has to be played every week. These wide receivers, if Chark and Conley end up being out again, dare I say, my man Colin Johnson,
the skyscraper,
7 foot tall.
Yeah, one of my big misses last week was thinking that it was going to be a big Keelan Cole game. And it almost was. He had a good red zone look that just it didn't get to him. But you're right. Colin Johnson definitely flashed. And this is one of those things you always look at it when a backup quarterback comes in. You look that they have a connection with a guy that they were playing with the twos, right?
Yep.
So the backup quarterback has been throwing passes to Johnson for this whole season with the twos. And now they're both thrust into these starting roles. So they continue their connection on the field. I wish I thought about that when I was making my DFS lineups instead of thinking, okay, it's Keelan Cole's role this week. But, I mean, he definitely can. With Glennon still starting, he could still have that connection and still have a role this week.
I said that stuff verbatim on Sunday at Axel Johnson, who watches our show pretty much every Sunday, was asking us, Colin Johnson or like two other wide receivers, they're kind of scrubbish. One of them was less scrubbish than the other. And I was like, I don't know, Colin Johnson, like maybe, but I can't say that. So, but it was the exact same logic. And sure enough, Keelan Cole in my lineups too. So, oh, well, it sucks. Moving over to Minnesota. It looks like Thielen's going to be back, right? He was activated today. Herb Smith still seems a little bit doubtful. We're starting everybody. We're Cousins, Cook, Thielen, Jefferson, Rudolph, who Kevin and I absolutely loved, and he came through. Just if he had a touchdown, I would have been doing backflips. But
yeah,
I think we're just starting everybody there. We can kind of move on. I will say Minnesota's defense is 100% in play. They've been looking much better. Don't let last week's game score throw you off. There were two. Man, did you guys see the Carolina's like back-to-back Justin Chin touchdown?
Yep.
IDP, baby.
So nuts, dude. Crazy.
I had him and Tyreek Hill in a lineup.
Woo.
Nice.
I scored like 300 points last week, basically on the strength of those two guys.
Real quick, what I will say
about
Minnesota, though, is just before we leave that game, is if you're playing DFS, I'm not going to pay up for Dalvin Cook this week because I think that if he's a little bit banged up and they go up big, they're going to let him rest for most of that second half or definitely spell him more than usual. So I'm not going to pay the high price tag this week.
Yep. And Laviska Shenault is hereby retired for 2020 as well.
Yes.
Such a shame because he's so athletic and he's so explosive. And there was like a week or two where it looked like they were trying to scheme the offense and scheme plays to get the ball in his hand and let him do his thing. And then they just stopped because I think it goes back to them just not wanting to win.
Yeah, it's going to take an offensive coordinator that's going to make room for them to scheme him. I mean, it's going to take, somebody just hand building that offense to tailor that around Shenault. I mean, they've got pieces there. Absolutely. If they get the right fit in there, if they get like an Eric Bieniemy to go over there, I mean, if they get a young quarterback, they've got pieces. James Robinson, that's a ready-made offense right there. They just have to work on that defense. And the defense has been better than, the sum of their parts too. I mean, granted, it's Jacksonville and they're, going to be down, but they've got some pieces. Joe Schobert's not bad. CJ Henderson at corner is not bad either. So they can absolutely work with what they've got there.
Yeah. So moving on to Cincinnati at Miami. And even this is probably the craziest line, I think, of the entire season, that it's Miami by 11.5, but with an over under of 42. And just who would have thought that these two teams that seem to be probably the first and second overall pick for favorites going into the 2021 draft, at least. And here they are with Miami just they look like they're potentially a playoff team. And Cincinnati is just falling off a cliff after, not falling off a cliff, but after the Joe Burrow injury. So with that cliff in mind, I'm just going to lob this up. Are there any Bengals that you're willing to trust, like actually willing to trust with week 13 were last week of the regular season?
So
both of you.
Yeah. So after the Burrow injury everybody kind of like reared it back and said, all right, we can't trust any of those pass catchers. And anyone was saying, well, you know, if you're going to trust anyone, it's going to be Boyd because he's a slot guy and the backup quarterback will look to the slot guy. But I was thinking it was going to be Higgins, and that's because Brandon Allen likes an outside receiver. The 3 games that he started last year for Denver, it was Sutton who went off. Sutton had over 16 points in 2 out of those 3 games. The 3rd game was at Buffalo, and they only scored 3 points, so that's why he didn't do anything there. But the other 2 games, he had over 16 fantasy points, and that's going to be what T. Higgins is for Allen this year. So I do think that Higgins is still viable, and I sure hope he is because he's in my dynasty league that I really need him to come through these next couple of weeks. So I think that he is viable even with Allen at quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, I was kind of surprised that, it makes sense certainly with Higgins. I mean, Higgins is an absolute stud. He got the touchdown. But again, you're looking at this matchup and with the 2 outside receivers and Byron Jones and Xavier Howard. I mean, you're looking at the slot right now, which can be exploited against Nick Needham. So I'm going to go back to the well with Tyler Boyd, but wouldn't surprise me if Higgins, snuck in a touchdown. Not worried about AJ Green. There's nobody else really I'm worried about. Miami's defense has been playing fantastic the last 6 or 7 weeks. So Gio Bernard, probably a little bit lower than an RB2 for me, just based on they're going to have to, stack the box a little bit and force Brandon Allen to make decisions, with throwing the football.
Yep, and I think that's going to be the biggest concern is can the Miami defense, continue what they're doing, get their turnover streak continuing, and with that, what do you think is going to happen with the Miami quarterback situation? Do you think Tua is going to start? Let's go with that question. And then do you think Tua should be the starter? So we'll flip it and go Kevin first.
Well, I wrote down here, I think it's really the one misstep of Brian Flores' tenure so far is just how this quarterback situation's been handled. He's been, me and Gary have waxed poetic about the Miami Dolphins as an organization, throughout this entire podcast life. So, really, it's kind of perplexing to see them go back to Fitzpatrick here, but I think you need to at least let Tua get his lumps. You don't, Miami, I know the record's pretty good, but geez, I think you got to take the lumps while you can, put him in there, let him get his feet wet, and then let him grow at the position. I know he's 1 calendar year from that awful injury, but I think if he's healthy enough to play, you got to just throw him out there.
Jamie,
and you said you said that you thought that you, as the Dolphins, said that you thought he was when you decided to make the move to him after the bye week. And that's where I was confused because then 2 weeks later in the 4th quarter, they said, well, Fitz gives us the best chance to win this game. I thought they took Tua out of that game because he got hurt. Then they came out the next day and said, no, it was, Fitz gave us the best chance to win the game. Well, then wait a minute. Why did you do the whole quarterback change to begin with? So I don't think they know what they want to do here. I think that they should have stuck with Fitz until he floundered. He was doing well. He had them in a position to make this playoff run. And I think now they're in a position where they're like, all right, we could be a playoff team, but we're not a championship team. So do we, let Fitz ride with it and take us to the playoffs and then lose in the playoffs? Or do we see what we got in our quarterback of the future and let him take his lumps, like Kev was saying? I think the right move is to put Tua in there. If you've committed to him out of the bye and said he's your quarterback, then go with him. Even if you're not going to win the Super Bowl with this Miami Dolphins team. So even if you make the playoffs, lose in the first round or whatever, let Tua do that. Let him learn from it.
Yeah. The only way you're going to be able to win in the league is if, taking some of the negatives and shaping them into learning experiences. So, them going back to Fitzpatrick, that's got to have you as Tua kind of looking behind you a little bit like, okay, well, if I throw this pick, is Ryan Fitzpatrick coming in now? That's scary for a quarterback to be able to get confidence, to be able to get in a rhythm, because, knowing that maybe that hook is going to be right there if you screw up.
And then even looking forward, Kev, if you're looking at your coach doing that to you now, you got a young quarterback and a young coach that are supposed to grow together in this organization. Now you have the quarterback questioning the coach's faith in you moving forward as well.
Right. Exactly.
I'm going to say that I disagree only slightly in that if the Dolphins think that they are going to be in the playoffs, which right now they look pretty well seated in the playoffs, that they should go to Fitz and just see what they can do. Give him his 1 year and just let it go, because maybe you put into a not really too shy. I still don't understand that, but maybe you were like, hey, actually, like we have a chance to do this, and once you get into the playoffs, like anything can happen, a la Tennessee Titans last year. So I think that if you put Tua back in, you are officially saying we don't think that we're going to make playoffs. And that if we do, like it's a bonus, but I don't actually think that we're going to do it. And they don't really care about it. And to me, like that's all it comes down to, because there's no reason that Tua couldn't sit and have an entire offseason and really get to where he is. Because I haven't been that enthused by Tua, but that's also because I have my own reservations about Tua. I just think that he's an old school quarterback in like a new school kind of NFL, but I haven't watched him too much to have that massive of a position on him. So we're going to move on from the QBs. Parker seems to be still there's the regular start that you can actually put into your lineups. Mike Gesicki, if you needed to, I still am not sure. Like, let me ask this: Austin Hooper or Mike Gesicki this week?
Mike Gesicki for the upside. One of our besties, Andrew Cooper from Fantasy Alarm, is the tight end guru, so to speak. Oliver Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki last week, playing into the slot, playing out wide more. He only played 2 inline snaps last week. So if they're going to keep going with that, that certainly makes them viable. And that they also led the league. Miami did in 12 personnel usage last week. So this could be something going forward where they're playing an inline guy in Durham Smythe or Adam Shaheen, split out Mike Gesicki wide. They're using Matt Collins, but if they're going 12 personnel, they've got Hollins, Parker, random tight end, and Mike Gesicki. So, if Gesicki's playing in that slot too, there's a lot of matchups that he can exploit with his size and athleticism.
And that was why we were so excited about him coming into the season, because that was the role that we expected for him to play, that big slot role in a Changeli offense. And then it ended up not being that, because they were using other guys in the slot and using him as an inline tight end. If this usage that we saw last week continues, then he's right back up in my target for, a top 7 tight end rest of season, if that's going to be the usage he gets. This is such a murky position. Who do you have outside of that top 7 that has a bigger upside than a guy who's going to play this many snaps out wide?
100%. But now we have to go back to the QB situation. If it's going to be Tua, I think he's going to play more in line, because they're going to be feeling that they need to add a little bit up there to protect him. If it's Fitz, they're like, we don't give a shit. Like Old Man River, like he can, we'll let him get sacked. This dude's indestructible. He's like 45 still playing. So that's my biggest concern. If it's Fitz, Gesicki's in. If it's Tua, for me, he's not. So I'm not worried about the running backs. I don't even know. It's probably going to be like Breida. I don't think that Ahmed's not going to be in, and I don't believe that Gaskins is back. But if Gaskins is there, then he's definitely in play. Indianapolis at Houston. This should be an interesting game. I'm guessing it's going to be more one-sided than we think, given what's happened with Houston. But Indianapolis, if Taylor is back in and starting, which I think I saw earlier that he has been activated, right? I know this was written yesterday when we did our show notes. I believe that Jonathan Taylor has been activated, and I apologize that I'm just trying to find the Fantasy Life update.
I haven't seen anything, but I wouldn't be shocked if he was.
Well, so if he's in, are you going to be playing him? That's first and foremost.
Yes, he was activated.
Yeah, okay, I thought so. So, and actually, I did see that it looks like Gaskins might be playing. So, for those of you that still have Gaskins, that's the spot there. So, Jonathan Taylor, is he a stud against this defense if he's in?
I think he has to be. If we see what we saw that last week that he played and he gets that volume, he's a volume running back. The 2 times that they gave him 20-plus carries, he's went off. So maybe they saw that happen, 2 weeks ago, and said, all right, this is what we have to do to get this guy going. He needs to get that momentum. That's the type of back he is. He needs to be fed the carries, get the momentum, and you see when he does that, he makes the best of it. So I don't know that I trust them to make that decision. I would hope that they're smart enough to do that. And in this matchup, like you said, it's a great matchup. So I would put him in and hope for the best, because I know that if he gets that volume, he's going to do something with it.
Yeah, Jordan Wilkins is banged up too, so that's another feather in his cap too. So we did see Hines, get some carries last week too, in addition to his receiving work. So I think both are definitely viable. I mean, Houston's a fantastic matchup; it's almost a gimme at this point, especially for a running back. So happy with both. Happy to play both. Taylor's an upside running back too. Hines more of that floor play, but still an RB2.
If we ever make Fighting Chance, just lost the name of our freaking show, Fighting Chance Live TV t-shirts.
Who are you?
Like Kevin Tompkins, a feather in his cap, because it's like my favorite phrase that you use. And then it might just be like Gary Hatto, like vivacious.
The sky is the limit. That's another one.
With Johnny Mutt on the back of yours.
Johnny Mutt.
Wink, wink, by the way. There might be some merchandise in the works here that I'm designing right now. Stay tuned with that.
Nyheim Hines, I personally am not that excited for this week. I think that the Colts, I think that Houston's going to have struggle to move the ball, and I think that the Colts are going to do well on defense, especially with a divisional game. And I just don't know if Hines is going to be that involved if they're going to be using Taylor. Do you guys disagree on this? Hines has obviously been getting touches and showing up, but it's been some weird kind of a couple games without Taylor, and then also obviously a down game script.
Yeah, I think if the game script does favor them like we expect it to, it should be mostly Taylor, and we'll see less of Hines. He'll still have a role. He'll still play his third downs. He'll still come in and have a series here or there, but I don't think he'll get that much of a workload in a positive game script for the team.
Yeah. And then Trey Boo Boo. Are we starting Trey Boo Boo now? Moving forward? Hey Boo Boo.
He is. I'm not.
Absolutely. I mean, he's touchdown dependent, but he's certainly involved. I mean, more than the other tight ends. He has 5 touchdowns in the last 8 games he's been active for. So in this, as Kate Majuk said,
in passing and 2 rushing.
That's fine. I mean, all you want is for your streaming tight end to get in the end zone. I mean, he's been doing it. So why the hell not? And as Kate Majuk said, in this tight end landscape, in this economy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if he didn't have Mo Alley-Cox there, I would lock and load him in my lineup as a guy who's probably going to be relied on in the red zone. Yes, he scored the last 2 weeks, but he had 2 catches 2 weeks ago and 3 catches last week.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's getting volume. Mo Alley-Cox also had 2 catches last week, 2 catches the week before. So it's just a matter of which big body they're going to throw to in the red zone. If they're down at the 5-yard line and throwing the ball, Mo Alley-Cox is going to box out like he did at VCU, and that's going to be the guy they throw it up to. So I don't know that I can trust him based on the usage. They find ways to get Burton the ball. So like Kev said, I mean, most tight ends, once you get past the 7 or 8, is 3 for 32, and you hope they score a touchdown. So Burton has a higher edge to possibly score that touchdown.
Yeah, the one thing that Mo Alley-Cox does have going for him is he does have the used to be a basketball player narrative. So, that's certainly helpful.
A good one.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly helpful for your tight end. I mean, I heard Antonio Gates played basketball once too. So Jimmy Graham too.
I'm surprised that you left this off here. Michael Pittman.
That's where I was going next.
He had a down game, but like he's looking good. I'm shocked. I didn't watch as much of that game, but 9 targets, only 2 catches. But I still think you got to go back to him. He's looking like their wide receiver 1.
I love him this week. He'll be in every DFS lineup I form. That there's no Bradley Roby shadow, so you're going to see Vernon Hargreaves. And Kev, you know how much I love targeting Vernon Hargreaves. I'm a diehard Bucks fan. I watched him get smoked for years and years. So now I do my best. I started Damiere Byrd 2 weeks ago in that breakout game because he was getting the Hargreaves matchup. So if you're going to get Pittman out wide against Hargreaves, who's going to be their top cornerback now with no Roby, sign me up.
Ball game. Yeah, I mean, Pittman's going to have his down games. I mean, the 9 targets were absolutely encouraging. So, I mean, he only had 2 catches out of that. But yeah, this matchup, I could probably go. No, you know what? I can't say that because everybody wants to say, oh, I could be an NFL quarterback. And then basically the guy that said he could be an NFL quarterback, Kendall Hinton, was not an NFL quarterback. So I should really retire that phrase. But I feel like I could do a little something against Vernon Hargreaves.
Did you see that Jerry Jones came out and was like, we know what the Broncos went through. We had to start Ben DiNucci. Fuck, Jerry.
Yeah, pretty much. That's if there's an indictment, I mean, you could put on bench DiNucci.
So moving to Houston, PED Central, we have Will Fuller out for 6 games, sharing his stash with Roby. So he's also going to be out. Man, that's a big blow to. I mean, that's probably it's their best DB and then their best wide receiver. And now all of a sudden you're going up against the Colts. Not that Houston was going anywhere this year, but I don't know what the hell to do with them. And Randall Cobb I think he's on IR, right, with his ankle.
Yep.
They let Stills go. Whoops. Yep. And
bad timing.
So I don't. Who is it? Vince? Not Vince Carter. What's his name? Is Carter their wide receiver too? I don't even know who the hell their wide receiver 2 is going to be.
QT.
Oh, it's QT. Yeah. Okay. Man,
but it could be also, Isaiah Coulter. I mean, there's a lot. They could re-sign Kenny Stills back. Who knows? It's a fluid situation, but I think Brandon Cooks is going to keep his 25% target share. I mean, I don't think you can really add to that. So really, you're just looking at everybody else around. And last year when DeAndre Hopkins was out, Duke Johnson was the second most targeted Texan on that team. So that could be something you could look to Duke Johnson being targeted more out of the backfield just based on necessity.
Yeah, and they did say they want to get Isaiah Coulter more involved, the pride of Rhode Island. They want to see what they got there in the rookie. But I think it's going to be Jordan Akins' season. I tweeted about it before. That's my guy. Kev, you know how much I love Jordan Akins. I've been on board that train all year long. He's a 6'4", 240. He's super athletic. Yep. He's a go-to reliable guy that I think, the Colts are good against the tight end, so it becomes like a down matchup for him. But what if he doesn't play tight end? What if he's the guy who splits out and plays that big slot role that we were talking about? I think he should get slot snaps. I think he'll get more targets. And I think Deshaun's going to have to rely on him as a go-to guy in this offense now.
Is Deshaun top 12 this week?
Yeah.
Yeah, top 12, yeah.
So he's like that, like 10 to 14 range?
Yeah, they'll be playing from behind. He'll get volume. He'll put up 300 yards, 280. 2 touchdowns to Jordan Akins.
I still have my QB6. So, I have him over Herbert. I have him over, Taysom Hill, Lamar Jackson, who have, really good matchups too. So, I think Deshaun Watson is absolutely, he's still in play. He still has Brandon Cooks. He still has all these weapons. It just a little bit more unproven after, the top 2 or 3 there. But I just want to ask one thing. Colts or Coulter, and I'll come back to that next week, and probably be wrong, but they're Colts or Coulter. Just saying. I'm trying to get out Isaiah Coulter some love here. It fell flat. I'm allowed one.
That's because Syracuse is kind of close to Rhode Island, so I get the love.
It's like 8 hours, man.
Yeah, which is how far Syracuse, New York is from Long Island, New York. So
no, it's not. It's like dude, it's like 6 hours.
Yeah.
You cut across, if you split the interstates, if you split 81 and 90, if you just go like diagonal, you could probably get there. But if you go 90 down Albany and then just hit down, probably get there in like 5.5, 6 hours.
Somehow a joke about Isaiah Coulter turned into this. If DeForest Buckner does play, I'm going to have Watson as a back end QB1. If Buck doesn't play, and because he's on the COVID list still, then I would. That's where I would have Watson as a top 6. I mean, we saw what the difference is when DeForest Buckner plays. I mean, the dude is top 5 defensive lineman in the NFL. So just crushing it right now when he's not with COVID. And I just wanted to say the one thing about Duke Johnson. I think he's a smash play only in the sense that he's going to get smashed at the line of scrimmage over and over and over. No chance. Put him in my lineup last week out of necessity due to the Steelers game, and he is just going back to the waiver wire or maybe my bench. I have no interest in him this week. So, but that's just me. Moving on to Detroit at Chicago. Kevin, how is this game going to go?
Well, if you're looking at Detroit, who just fired Matt Patricia, we fired our head coach and play inspired football narratives absolutely in effect this weekend for the Lions against the Chicago Bears, who pretty much said Olay to Green Bay and let them do whatever they wanted on offense. So, I mean, I'm looking at guys like, DeAndre Swift, Kenny Golladay, practiced in a limited capacity, I believe. So trending toward playing. We'll see what happens during the week. JB, what do you think about those two guys in a suspect matchup on paper against Chicago? I mean, do you have any? I mean, I think DeAndre Swift is a start no matter what. But I mean, Kenny Golladay, if he does play off a hip injury, are you playing him likely to go up against Kyle Fuller?
Not if I have a better option. Obviously you think of Golladay still as this high-end wide receiver too on a fantasy team, but he hasn't been that this year, and it's largely because he hasn't been healthy. So coming off the hip injury with the matchup against a good secondary, he's going to be hard to trust. And I think this whole passing attack is going to be hard to trust this week. Swift or bust for me on this offense this week.
I lobbed you the opportunity to talk about your favorite guy.
I know, and I love how you Sanu to throw that one to me, but he only had 4 targets last week. He did score the touchdown, which I was up and dancing at Thanksgiving because that's been my guy. Gary, I don't know if you saw it before.
Oh, I do know.
Started. Yeah. My flag was so firmly planted with that roll
right
up
his ass, man.
Oh, man, and I felt great for the guy to be able to get in the end zone. One of my friends texted me like, "Oh, why is your boy celebrating? They're down 3 touchdowns." I'm like, dude was on his couch last week. He got another opportunity, and here he is on Thanksgiving scoring a touchdown. He deserves to celebrate. I was happy for him. I don't expect it to happen again this week. I'd love for it to happen, not in this matchup.
And I will say it was pretty interesting to see him off the street play it over Quintus Cephas. You'd think a team, that's certainly going to be rebuilding a little bit with a new head coach to maybe give Cephas some snaps and see what's, he can do. But it really spoke volumes seeing Sanu, basically a street guy right now, playing over him. So, he could be viable if Golladay does not play. It was a very deep, maybe a contrarian DFS take. But probably not if Golladay plays. I think he's just stuck in the weeds.
I have a feeling that it's going to come out this week when Sanu gets cut that was actually the reason they fired Matt Patricia was because they put him over Cephas, and Jamie's just going to be like, "Come on, man!"
As the one Quintus Cephas truther in week 2, I mean, it was tough scene, but probably didn't have anything to do with his Twitter burner.
So let's move to the other side of the ball. Mitch the Great is going to be starting at QB again. And do you guys have any faith in him? I mean, this is a matchup that Kevin has always touted as Trubisky's kind of go-to. Kevin, I'm going to let you again.
He's the streaming option, Kev.
He's QB 12 this week for me, man.
What did you have him as that? What was that early this season? It was this season. You had him like QB 4, maybe?
No, it wasn't that high.
But he was crazy high.
He was like 10 or 11, but yeah, historically, he's always been fantastic. It's the one matchup you can almost bank on. I mean, the last matchup he played against Detroit, he had to pull it out in the 4th quarter, so to even make his nut. So, Mitch, I'm absolutely 100% on. As a streaming quarterback, I'll start him in a couple leagues, and then you look at everybody else who just has plus matchups across the board.
So, Kev, let me ask you this. Would you start Mitch or would you start Phillip Rivers against Houston with no secondary?
Mitch. And I like Rivers too. I like Rivers this week, but I do. I'll take Mitch.
I trust Houston's front 7 more than Detroit's front 7, so yeah. I'll go with Mitch. Scary, which I mean that leads to Monty even like David Montgomery. You can start him. He's just a middling RB2, and hope he gets a little bit better run now that he's going to be back in better game shape probably after missing a couple games. You're not ever sitting Allen Robinson. He's just too damn good. And he proved that last week. Anybody that was doubting him last week, I mean, look what just happened. I have no interest in anybody else in the offense. Is there one person, you can just say one name, who are you going to start outside of A-Rob and Monty?
Say it.
I'm not going to start him, but I think he's interesting going forward. And it's Cole Kmet, who is playing more snaps, who is, than Jimmy Graham, who's been, I think he went down to a 35% snap share last week. He ran more routes than Graham. He's been split out at wide receiver too. So Cole Kmet certainly is more interesting now. It's not somebody you're going to go out and just start, but if you have room on your bench, go ahead and add him. He could be somebody that, could be viable going forward. If he can, his stats haven't really shown it. It's the peripherals and everything else that's really, leading to the possibility of something. But that's a guy like Mark Andrews in 2018, where you started to see him get a lot more work, and then he trended up and up. And then look what he did in 2019, just absolutely blew up. Not going to say he's Mark Andrews, but this is a guy with draft he was picked with a high pick, I believe, a day 2 pick, and is certainly viable. So go stash him on a bench.
Not the answer I thought you were going to give. It wasn't. I thought you were going to go with the Moon. So I'll mention Darnell Mooney, because I think with Mitch at quarterback, it becomes better for Mooney, because I don't know if you guys saw, like a month ago or 3 weeks ago, there was a clip of Mooney running some awesome routes, leaving DBs in the dust, and Nick Foles throwing the ball like 30 feet away from him, like nowhere near him. I think with Mitch at quarterback, that's someone who could possibly get the ball to him down the field. So do I think he's an every week start? No, but I think he's a guy who can find the end zone if he's running those crisp routes and getting open down the field.
Yeah, he's almost on. With the matchups that they have left, Detroit, Houston, at Minnesota, Jacksonville, Green Bay, he could hit 100 targets this year. I mean, he could easily be a 55 catch, 700-yard guy. And those are the guys you look for coming into year 2, where guys that can take a step up. If the Bears have a quarterback change, I think that's going to be huge for Mooney if they can get, whatever they do with Matt Nagy, whatever they do, with Ryan Pace is whatever. But yeah, Mooney could absolutely be viable, with Mitch throwing the ball 100%.
I just want to remind you that Kmet has already met his actual TD quota. Every rookie tight end gets about 1 game where they get to catch a touchdown, maybe have a 2 touchdown game, but I don't know. I will never trust a rookie tight end unless it's a dire situation. Yeah. So we're going to move on to New Orleans at Atlanta. As I was thinking about rookie tight ends, that I was like, Adam Troutman, hell yeah, Hill's starting. He's totally going to go to Troutman. This makes sense. Josh Hill's not starting. This is amazing. Nope.
Troutman's a fish play.
Yep. Oh, look at you. All right. New Orleans at Atlanta. Taysom Hill, he caps the upside of the running game other than his own, right? He's getting his points on the ground. He is doing fantastic. But what do you do with the other two? Disregard the fact that Latavius Murray had a fantastic game, but that was the weirdest game. It felt like 1940s football, right? It was incredibly strange. So what do you do with Alvin Kamara moving forward? That's kind of a rhetorical question, right? Because there's nothing to do with him. He's in your lineup regardless, right?
Yeah. And I compared that game that we saw Sunday to an Army-Navy game. You had a tight end and a wide receiver running the offenses. So, call him a running back and a wide receiver running the offenses. Yeah. So that's kind of what it was. And it was a weird game. But I think that if that's the offense New Orleans is going to play, then it's a between the tackles running back like Latavius Murray that complements Taysom Hill running that type of offense. So that's what scares me about Kamara, because clearly Kamara is the better back. He's awesome, but he makes his bread in the passing game, and that's not happening. I mean, Taysom Hill threw for 78 yards last week? I mean, yeah, they didn't have to throw much, but he's not going to throw much. So if they're going to run that type of offense, I'm afraid it's going to be a 50-50 timeshare because Murray fits that system.
Yeah, Kamara has 3 targets the last 2 games. And he had 1 catch for -2 yards. So, yeah, I mean, we've seen the correlation between running quarterbacks and throwing passes out to the running backs. It tends to go way down. That's why we're seeing, we were seeing, Austin Eckler have struggles with Tyrod Taylor. Now that he got healthy with Justin Herbert, now he's just looking like a world beater. And, we've seen it time and time again from these running quarterbacks that just absolutely hamper the upside of receiving backs, and Alvin Kamara is basically a wide receiver that can run the ball. So, Taysom Hill is absolutely brutal right now. And to your point, JB, that's a great point about Latavius Murray, Syracuse's own Latavius Murray, by the way. Being the complement in that offense, the way Taysom Hill operates, you want that straight line bruising running back, and that's absolutely what Latavius Murray is. So, if you're looking at a positive game script, which the Saints were at the jump, that's somewhere where Latavius Murray can just absolutely rack up, opportunity there.
It's going to be weird to see. I do like the fact that, Michael Thomas is going to be even more healthy than he was when they played Atlanta 2 weeks ago. So this will be an interesting game. I think that I think you're starting Hill, Kamara, probably Murray, and Thomas. And I think that all of them are pretty fine starts relative to what you're expecting from them. So Atlanta, let's flip to that side of the ball. Saints defense has been so damn good. If I remember correctly, now it's at 1 touchdown in 4 games, I think, that they've allowed, or at least passing touchdowns. And what's Atlanta going to do here? So is Julio going to play? Let's start with that.
It's just murky as it always is. Probably a game time decision.
And so then it's going to be Ridley and probably Hurst as the primary pass catching options. You're never going to sit Ridley, I think, but I can't say the shine has come off of him. Like, that's not the right way to say it, right? But he came out bursting. I mean, in the first 4 or 5 games of the season, Ridley looked like he was going to be the wide receiver 1 in Dynasty and everything. And we just had found, and he had ascended to everything. And he got injured and whatnot. So I think they're going to be starting both of them. But is Marcus Lattimore going to be playing? Is it Marshawn?
I think so.
I'm going to mix them up every single damn time. Is it Marshawn or
Marshawn?
Marshawn.
It's not the former 49ers running back.
Ever since you called it out, dude, it's like a Christine and Christina. I will never know what your name is if you have Christine or Christina and I call you wrong once. So Marshawn Lattimore, thank you. I mean, if he's there and if he's going to be on Ridley, it might be a little bit tougher, even if Lattimore hasn't been playing up to his previous standards that we've seen in the past. But so Matt Ryan, so we'll get there. Matt Ryan and then the RB situation. Matt Ryan, is he a QB1?
No, not against this defense. And Lattimore did practice in full today, so he should be back. He's only really good, though, against Mike Evans, so he'll be just regular good this week.
That's true, actually.
It's very true. It's because he one time stole his chain. No. So what about the running backs? Is there a running back that you're willing to start in this game?
Nope.
No. It's gross.
Nope. Yeah. It's freaking weird. Even
not
if Gurley
falling in
plays,
that Brian Hill trap.
Yeah,
No.
Exactly. Every single time, man. Oh, it's terrible.
Yep. He's a terrible pass blocker, and that's why you didn't see him play as much as we wanted to either. I think Coop posted something. I think it was Coop that posted something today that he graded out like as the worst pass blocking running back in the league last year, like literally the last one. So, I mean, I'm not falling for that trap again.
Yeah, it's not going to go well against this defensive front.
No.
All right.
I think this is going to be a really low-scoring game, so I'm not playing really anybody in this offense. And I'd hesitate to play New Orleans because even like Taysom Hill and that type of offense, Atlanta's got fast linebackers like Deion Jones that can kind of stick with them. So I think this is going to be a low-scoring game, and it might disappoint fantasy players.
What a change a week makes, because 2 weeks ago in New Orleans, I believe the over-under was 56, and now it's 46 2 weeks later. That's just wild.
It's crazy. Yep. I would bank on New Orleans figuring it out. I think Taysom Hill in his third game, it was kind of a weird game against the Broncos. I do actually think that I'm not hesitant to start them. I will have a lineup where I do have strangely enough, maybe Hill, Murray, and Thomas, but at least Hill and Thomas combined stacked, just because I think they'll get that figured out, get it together. Kevin,
no Troutman.
Excuse me?
No Troutman.
No Troutman. No fish plays this week for me. Thanks, Kevin. Kevin, why don't you take us into the late game as I'm starting to stutter?
Yeah. Hey, nothing wrong with that. A lot of people are afflicted with. No, I'm just kidding. Giants at Seahawks, starting the late slate. So with Giants, Daniel Jones has a hamstring, probably not going to be able to play. So we're looking at Colt McCoy here. He's certainly going to affect the pass catchers around him. So right now, even with Daniel Jones, it was really only Sterling Shepard and Evan Engram with any viability. So JB, are you even trusting Slayton here? I mean, is there anybody outside of Shepard or Engram that you're trusting with any sort of certainty here?
No, and with Colt McCoy, I'm a little afraid of Shepard too, so I think it'll only be Engram that I trust at this point. And look, Colt McCoy is at least a viable backup quarterback. It's not like you turn into Jeff Driscoll or a wide receiver off the practice squad. So at least he's a viable quarterback, veteran, been in the league for a long time, but he's still Colt McCoy. So I don't think this offense is going to do much. It's going to be a heavy dose of Wayne Gallman and some Evan Engram, and that's really all I'm going to be able to trust until Jones comes back.
Yeah, for sure. And Gary, something to be concerned about with Wayne Gallman, at least if I were a defensive coordinator, I'd be stacking that box and just letting Colt McCoy beat me. If he does it, great. But I mean, the way Wayne Gallman, I think he certainly deserves a little bit of that attention. Any concerns about Wayne Gallman this week?
Yeah, I definitely think that the Seattle defense has gotten better, as much as people don't want to recognize that Carlos Dunlap has made a difference. They got Jamal Adams back. This is one of those games where it's just going to be terrible for Giants. I just don't see a way. I actually love Evan Engram, and I've been on Evan Engram all offseason and still maintain faith throughout the season, regardless, because of his target potential or because of his target floor. And this is a game where I don't really want to touch anybody here. If they go for it, fine, that's fine. But it's freaking Colt McCoy, man. Like, he gets one random start, every now here and there. He's becoming Chase Daniels. So I just have no interest in it.
Except Colt McCoy actually starts. But yeah, so moving over to Seattle, I mean, Chris Carson we saw last week. Carlos Hyde was outsnapped and outcarried. Hyde outsnapped and outcarried Carson. You had to figure that was just working Carson back into the fold. So is it fair to say, JB, we're putting Chris Carson back on that solid RB2 tier with a little more upside there?
Yeah, for sure. I think that like you said, it was just kind of easing him back in, and that's why you saw a little bit more Carlos Hyde than normal. And I think now that he showed that he was healthy and he was running well. I mean, he was running hard, straight Chris Carson running style, just running people over, putting his shoulders down and just running into defenders and running them over. So I think we'll see more of him this week.
I would caution people, though, that this is just going to be a flip, in my opinion. Like, Hyde is going to still get, let's just go with 30, like 70-30 or whatever it would be. Hyde is going to be involved. They like having two backs there and having someone that they can rotate as they need to, and especially with Chris being a violent runner. They're both kind of violent runners, but Carlos Hyde just wants to be a violent runner rather than is one. So I would just say that Hyde probably has some deep flex 2 appeal there, that he's still going to get his touches. I don't think it's that deep, just because you're going against the Giants and they're going to smoke them. Like, why risk Chris Carson getting injured when he has gotten injured later in the season? They've already gotten screwed at this time the last 2 years, I believe, with Carson, and then last year with Penny. So keep them fresh and don't press your luck when you're clearly in the clear lead for that division.
Yeah, it's like Gus Edwards level of viability, I would say. That sounds about right.
I just want to say one random thing, and that's I'm really butthurt with myself for when we were doing the offseason. Why am I talking about the offseason so much? I don't really care. But I was like, I really want DK to be in my top 10 for wide receivers, but I feel like it's weird to put him up there, blah, blah, blah. And I just absolutely loved him, despite the fact that I don't own him in as many places as I should, given how much I loved him. And I mean, I genuinely believe that within the next probably 12 months, we are going to be talking about him as probably one of, if not the best wide receiver in the NFL.
I think we already are.
Yeah,
I think
he's
we
there.
already are. I mean, he was one of my bold predictions this year before the season started to be a top 15 wide receiver, and he's exceeding those expectations. Yeah. He's become my favorite player in football. He's just so much fun to watch. And every week he's getting these tough matchups. He's getting Ramsey and Peterson and Slay, and this week he's going to get Bradbury. So he's going up there against top competition, and he's dusting them. I mean, that's why I have this up here, man. That's my dude right there. That's my
awesome.
Dude. I hate being a Niners fan. Oh, I mean, I love it, but I just hate the fact that I freaking just I love Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, and Chris Carson and DK all for like fantasy. Like I love having them. They're fun players to watch, and then I have to like just hope that they don't kick our ass. And it's NFC West, man, breaking hearts all the time.
I know how you feel, man. NFC South. I'm a Bucs fan. Look at all the weapons that we have in our division for fantasy. I know the feeling.
I'll ask both of you this one question real quick as a little nod to 2021. Is DK Metcalf a first-round pick in fantasy next year? Because I think he is.
For me, he is.
He's a top 3 wide receiver, so it depends on where I'm picking in the draft.
Is he a top 3?
I think
so. So you're putting him above Hill, Adams, and Thomas?
It's Adams, Hill, and DK for me.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why he's
QB situation.
So if he's my third, then it depends on where I'm picking. If I'm at the back end and the first 2 go, then maybe if there's no running back
DK,
there.
Adams, Hill as it's 2 of those.
And you can make a case for DK. I mean, I don't know if you can make a case as wide receiver 1. You could make a case for him or Hill just based on trajectory.
You can make a case for him as 1 because you could say that Hill is still getting split around the target distribution, and you could say that Adams, this might be his peak season because they could be actually doing this transition to that run game. They could actually do it. We thought they were going to do it. They just didn't.
Well, I mean, it is what it is. But I mean, if we're looking at the running backs that are going to be going in the first, there's going to be a lot of turnover. I mean, we're looking at Zeke Elliott could be a second-round pick next year. Saquon Barkley, we don't know with his ACL. That could be something where he, if there's some reports that come out, it's going to scare people off. Joe Mixon, Josh Jacobs, guys like that. So that first round, I think Kelsey is a locked-in first-rounder next year, regardless. I mean, I know he was kind of a sharp first-round pick, in industry mocks, but I don't think he was quite a first round pick in your buddy's home league there. But I think he's a lockdown first round pick. And I think you're going to see those 3 guys, Tyreek, Adams, and Metcalf, be first round picks next year.
Well, Kev, you're a perfect proof of the zero RB strategy coming through this year. So I think more people that see that and see the results of what happened with it this year might try it out and dabble with it a little bit next year. That's when you're going to see more wide receivers off the board in the first round.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you just, and that's it. There's always going to be shifts in draft philosophy too, because as more people tend to go with wide receivers, you're leaving, valuable workloads, on the board for people to take. I mean, the reason that I really went away from running backs high was because of, just so many running backs were going and so many running backs with questions going super high. Like Jonathan Taylor, I would not touch in the 3rd round. The only running backs that I really wanted were like Chris Carson and James Conner in that range. Other than that, I'm just taking shot after shot on 25% target share guys and up.
Yep.
I think that we should tag this episode of are you going to be missing playoffs? Join us at that 1 hour and 8 minute mark where we start talking about the 2021 fantasy football drafts. And then we go back to the rest of the game.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, JB, we're used to running kind of late here, and we tend to run at over the hour 30. If you have stuff to do, please let us know. I'm pretty sure you live on the East Coast, so I know it's even later there for you. So we can fly through some of these. Just give us the heads up.
Yeah, no worries. The wife's got the puppy, so I'm sure by now she's waiting for me to get down, and it's almost their bedtime. But, man, come on, Fighting Chance Live, baby. Let's roll.
Let's roll it.
Let's roll it. Let's get into that NFC West matchup. Rams at Cardinals. I mean, we saw Cam Akers really kind of show himself last week. And so I think for the first time since pretty much week 1, where we thought Cam Akers would get a lot of that work, I'm putting him ahead of those other two guys in Malcolm Brown and Daryl Henderson. JB, what do you think? Is it finally time we can be confident in Cam Akers ahead of the pack here?
Yeah, and I think you're starting to see that trend. You've seen it over the past few weeks of the rookie running back starting to take over the backfields. We talked about Swift a little bit before. Dobbins looked to have established himself before the whole COVID thing. So I think we're seeing the same in LA, and I think it's going to be Akers leading that backfield now. I do still worry that the other guys will still be involved, but I think it will be Akers that's leading the backfield. So I would start him over the others by now for sure.
Yeah.
Agreed.
How do you feel, Gary?
No, I agree. I mean, I think that they've been waiting for this to happen, and Henderson is slowly falling off. I think, ironically, Malcolm Brown is going to be the guy that's just going to be a thorn in everyone's side. I think that Akers we knew that he was going to be coming on stronger as the season went on, and they gave him more time to get acclimated to that offense. I don't think it's an easy offense probably to learn, given, it's kind of Shanahan-y, even, those are interchangeable terms, McVay and Shanahan, I feel like at this point. But I'm excited to see what they can do. And that offense is just that offense is clicking sans like last week, and my Niners just stomping them, not stomping because they won with a field goal at the end of the game, but I mean nobody kind of saw that coming. So yeah, I like Akers.
Yeah. Yeah, he has the clear and obvious upside over the other two. I don't know if it was really them waiting or just them being hesitant to kind of just pull the trigger and just let him go off. But yeah, definitely here for Cam Akers season. He's been a hold in a lot of leagues for me because I did draft him in a lot of my teams as my RB1 and zero RB build. So finally happy to at least see him do something here. And Cup and Woods are easily, you're not starting them. So going over to Arizona, right now it's tough for Kyler Murray. I mean, he's doing what he can through the air, but defenses are making it a priority to stop him on the ground. Last two games against Seattle, New England, 46 yards rushing and only 2 rushing first downs combined. So you enter that Rams defense, you're not benching Kyler Murray, but you have to just beware of, his past, last 2 games plus the Rams defense. So, really that's helped Kenyon Drake, be a little bit more viable. So JB, what do you think about Kenny Drake this week? Granted, it gets the Rams, tough front line, but he's certainly seen his stock come up with Kyler Murray's struggles on the ground.
Yeah, and I wish it was a better matchup, but he has been getting the volume since he's been back from the injury. And like you said, I mean, I think part of it is also that they're running Kyler less because of his shoulder. They don't want him to get hit and go down and land on the shoulder. So yes, defenses are focusing on stopping him on the ground, but they're also kind of protecting him in Arizona by not letting him run as much so that he doesn't take that hit on the shoulder or fall on the shoulder. So Drake is going to be a good volume play. He's going to be involved. And look, there's still the threat of Kyler running. So there's still going to be somebody's eyes in the backfield to watch Kyler while Drake takes off and gets past him. So I definitely think he's a viable, running back too at this point.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I mean, other than that, you're starting Hopkins, you're starting Kirk. I think Kirk is a solid, wide receiver 3 with upside here. Not really starting anybody else there. So let's go over to the next game here. New England at the Chargers. So for New England, I mean, Chargers can't really stop the run. So the Patriots might have to just slow the game down with Damien Harris. So I think he's a really nice RB2 here in a matchup where I think it'll definitely go over the 47 over under here. I think there's a potential for a bit of a shootout here. Cam Newton's rushing for keeps him as a streamer. But you've got White there, you've got Jacoby Myers. Gary, are you comfortable with Damien Harris, despite that lack of TD upside?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I am. In this matchup, I do like him. I think that he has TD upside. I think we just have missed it the last couple of weeks. I think the James White thing was a total fluky. He's not going to get 2 red zone carries for touchdowns. And then Sony, I'm not really that nervous about. I think Sony's just a guy, in my opinion. And I think that Damon Harris is more than just a guy.
Yeah, I agree. I like Harris a lot, and I think that he should be the lead back in this offense, but it's going to depend on the game flow as well. I mean, if you look at this New England team, that offense doesn't always click. So if they get down early against the Chargers, you could see a lot more James White, and that's what scares me about Harris is that if they go down, you're going to see White catching passes out of the backfield, and that's going to limit the upside you're going to get from Harris.
I just don't know how much they're going to get down. I don't know. I just have a feeling. I just feel like the Patriots have remained in these games more so than we expected. And I think that Herbert puts up fireworks all the time, but it's going to be good. Stephon Gilmore versus Keenan Allen. If he shadows him, that's going to be tough. Obviously there's still Mike Williams there and whatnot, but I definitely think that Harris is going to have his upside. I think that we're going to be looking at almost a New England Buffalo game where Harris went off for like 113 and a touchdown or something. And yeah, it feels like that.
Do you think Gilmore will follow Allen into the slot and shadow him in the slot, or will it be Mike Williams that gets shut down?
I don't know. That'll be the difficult thing.
I think it's going to be Williams, honestly. I don't think Gilmore really follows into the slot. I think he just stays on one side. So if you're looking at the Chargers going over to their side, I mean, if there's a matchup to exploit there, it's Herbert's, Herbert loves the big play. The Patriots can't really stop the big play. They're 30th in explosive pass rate given up, right next to the juggernauts Atlanta and Detroit. So given, Stephon Gilmore and J.C. Jackson, who've been pretty solid at corner, they can give up that big play. So I think it's gonna be tough for Mike Williams just based on that Gilmore matchup. I mean, what do you think about Mike Williams possibly going up with Gilmore shadowing him, but the Patriots do give up that pass, so something's got to give here.
Yeah, and that's what I'm afraid of because I don't know, like you said, I don't know if Gilmore does travel into the slot on a shadow. So I think that if that's going to be the case, they might have him lock down Mike Williams to try to counteract that big play. So I'm going to be off Williams this week, and maybe it's a big Jalen Guyton touchdown that helps nobody. Yeah. But I'm gonna kind of shy away from Williams this week, thinking that he's going to draw a decent amount of Gilmore.
Yeah, I agree. And let's just say also, Austin Eckler's back as your RB1, so no reservations there. He saw just an absolute smash upside and workload last week in his return from injury. So no concerns there for me.
What did he get? 16 targets last week? Something like that? It's insane.
Yeah, he just something sick like that. I'm pulling it up right now. I had him in my DFS lineup. Yeah, he had 16 targets, 11 catches for 85 yards, plus 14 carries. So you're looking at 30 touches. I mean, that's 25 touches, 30 opportunities. That's sick.
Don't know that we'll get that every week with Herbert, but hey, I love it. I love it.
Yeah. You know the upside's there. With Eckler and Herbert's, like I said, not the most mobile, though he does, have his moments, but yeah, certainly going to help Eckler there as your season goes on. Let's go over to Philly at Green Bay. Green Bay favored by over a touchdown, 8.5 points here. So Carson Wentz, much has been said about his offensive line going up against the Packers, who do have the fourth worst pressure rate in the NFL. So that could be something where Carson Wentz does have a little bit more time to find, get his bearings and get some throws up. So I would say Goddard would be prime for a big spot, but Zach Ertz is likely to come back this week. So pick somebody, JB, out of this Eagles receiving core to pin your hopes on, because there's a lot of questions everywhere.
Yeah, and I think, I think it's got to be Goddard. I mean, if you watched that game last week, he was the one that was getting open. He was the one who, and Wentz wasn't seeing him too. And that's what scares me about Wentz is that they showed a couple of times where he had an open receiver and he wasn't making that read. And he was looking completely elsewhere. He was locked somewhere else and wasn't really reading the field well. So, yes, he was getting pressured and his offensive line wasn't helping him. But it's like he was locked on his first read and not reading the field, and that scares me. Now, hopefully they realize that Goddard should be the first read on most of the plays. So if there is one pass catcher I'm going to go with, it's probably going to be Goddard. I really wanted it to be Rager, but it's not.
Yeah, we all wanted Rager. I certainly did. I mean, Travis Fulgham, at this point, you can just drop him. I mean, he's, with all those guys coming back, Alshon Jeffrey even getting some snaps, I think, Fulgham is certainly droppable in this case. And then Miles Sanders, I mean, with Green Bay's pretty bad run defense, I think he could flirt with overall RB1 this week. I think that's the guy you're going to lean on there and then let everything else work off of what Miles Sanders can do in the run game.
Yeah, he's going to be in all my DFS lineups this week too. I think it's a smash spot for him. Green Bay's very generous against the run, and I think Carson Wentz struggling. He's going to get the volume in a good matchup. I'll put him in there.
Yep. And if I could say anything, JB is going to have everybody in his DFS lineups this week. He's playing 25 guys.
Sanders, Akins, Pittman, Sanders, everywhere.
Boom. Going over to Green Bay. I mean, start your studs. It goes without saying there. Gary, what do you think about Jamal Williams just remaining that kind of low end RB2, interesting kind of flex option there? What do you think about him?
Not in this game. I have too much trust in the Philly defensive line. I don't know. I think that this is probably going to be a game where they try to spread it out, get away from that line, have more dump offs to Aaron Jones, obviously Adams, whatnot. Last week I thought that Jamal Williams was going to be a play, and he ended up just, it wasn't terrible, but he wasn't anything special. So I think I'm going to be fading him even as a flex.
Yeah, I mean, he saw double-digit fantasy points though in PPR. I mean, he was RB18 last week. He got 17 carries in that game, and granted, it was game script dependent because they were up big 41. They were up 41 to I think 17. So, and it still got a touchdown too. So it is what it is. But more often than not, he finds his way to get involved. I think he out of the 1, 2, 3, 4 out of the 10 games that he's played, he's only had 2 where he's had he's had 4 double-digit games, and they were at least, no worse than quarterback or running back 18. So he's certainly interesting, and he's more involved than he probably should be with Aaron Jones there. But, I think he's just kind of that break glass in case of emergency, flex play for me.
Yeah.
But let's go over to Sunday Night Football. The YOLO Denver Broncos at the Kansas City Chiefs here. Got to figure Denver's going to be down considerably in this game, and probably going to play Judy and Fant as they're in catch-up mode if Drew Lock can put on a mask and stay away from everybody else. So other than that, I mean, is there anybody else here it's even remotely interesting? I mean, the run game, Lindsey probably not going to suit up, so you're looking at Melvin Gordon getting the lion's share there. JB, what do you think about Melvin Gordon? Does he do anything for you?
Yeah, he's my other sexy flexi, and just before I say that, I love the guy. Like, the parameters are they have to be outside the top 60 of the Fantasy Pros consensus rankings, so he is just outside that top 60, and that's what makes him a flex play for me this week. I think, like you said, with Lindsey likely to miss the game, even if he plays, he'll probably be limited with a knee injury. So I think Gordon gets the carries, he gets the bulk of the work, he does catch some passes out of the backfield. Kansas City is a good matchup for running backs. They can be run against. So I think that Denver, yes, they'll likely be behind, but Gordon will have to be involved in the game to take some pressure off a lock. So I think he is a viable flex play.
Yeah, I'm just gonna screw with you, and in my consensus rankings, I'm gonna put Melvin Gordon at RB1 just to kind of screw with you and get him into the top 60. No, I won't do that. But as far as the Chiefs, I mean, Tyreek Hill went nuclear. You're starting everybody, that you can. That's worth a damn. So I don't think there's really any questions you have to ask here. Anything else you want to add about the Chiefs, guys?
Gary, what's your thoughts on that backfield? Do you trust CEH?
Yeah. I mean, I this game I think is a little bit tough because I think that the Broncos have a solid line and whatnot. I trust the fact that he'll get a floor of touches. He's in that offense. It's hard to ever bench him, especially with what you paid up for him. My concern is that I think that the Chiefs don't play the Broncos as well as we think, just because we think of it as the Chiefs. And just the fact that it's a division game, Vic Fangio and whatnot. That being said, like, I don't want to think that I'm casting doubt on any of the studs there, but I think you got to start them no matter what, because on any given week, it could all of a sudden be the CEH 2-touchdown game, and they just decide to run the hell out of him because they know that they can, and they see something that they're able to exploit. I think that's just the evil genius. He's not even evil, but just the genius of Andy Reid is that he is just such a damn good offensive mind, and he'll do whatever the hell he wants, and you just kind of have to have your pieces. I actually think that like the Demarcus Robinsons and Sammy Watkins, almost Demarcus Robinson doesn't have to be started every week, but I think that Sammy Watkins, you kind of have to start most weeks because you never know if all of a sudden he's going to go off on your bench for like 7, 1, 14, and 2.
Yep.
So
I won't touch him. I can't. I just can't do it. He's burned me so many times. I'll start him in week 1 because he always does something week 1. After that,
see, I won't draft him because I feel the way that Gary just said. So that's why I won't draft him. But if I have him, then I have to play him, like Gary said, because you never know when the week's going to be.
Right. Exactly. And I mean, and at the end of the day, they're all tied, to that awesome Kansas City offense. So, I mean, you want pieces of that offense. Sammy Watkins does come cheaper, especially, came cheap in drafts. So it is what it is. But let's go over to Monday Night Football. The Washington, those football teamers at the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we know about Terry McLaurin. We know about Antonio Gibson, who absolutely blew up on Turkey Day. But predicting probably that negative game script against the Pittsburgh Steelers, does that keep J.D. McKissic in play here? Because we know positive game script, they're going to go away from J.D. McKissic because they really don't need him. They could just hammer it home with Antonio Gibson, which sounds weird if you were listening to me saying this in the offseason, you're looking at a wide receiver being that hammer. But right now, that's pretty much what Antonio Gibson has been. So, yeah, McKissic, is he in play here in a potential negative game script, JB?
Yeah, because he is a trusted pass catcher. So I do think that they are trying to make Gibson that primary back, and he is the primary back. But it doesn't mean that McKissic won't be involved. Will he have a huge role? No. But if he catches 5 passes for 32 yards and maybe finds the end zone, then he's a guy you could play. I mean, there's still a couple of bye weeks. There's still some injuries. So some people, like me in one league, have been starting McKissic every single week. So I have to in that situation. And you know what? In a PPR league, you could do a lot worse.
Yeah, you could do a lot worse than poor man's James White. Absolutely. I mean, I have 4 Washington football team players on my Scott Fishbowl team. One of them is not my favorite. It's Terry McLaurin. But I'm starting, for the most part, because Minshew and Brees are hurt. I have to start Alex Smith. So hate this matchup for Alex Smith, certainly. But going over to that Pittsburgh Steelers there, Gary, Washington's allowed the 3rd fewest fantasy points to running back. So with the questions with James Conner, we don't know with COVID and his, certainly past medical history. So we didn't see much out of Benny Snell, really, to warrant any kind of optimism. I expect kind of a washout game from the running backs and just, kind of like we saw today, just a lot of passing. Maybe you're going to get more deep shots with Ben Roethlisberger than he got earlier this afternoon against Baltimore. So everybody's got to be in play for the pass catchers, including Ebron, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think that they're one of the most neutral game script passing teams, which is not something you would think of when you think of the Steelers of old, and especially the Steelers with just like this amazing defense. Like, what the hell is going on there? It genuinely hurts my heart that Benny Snell did not just go off in this game. I spent so much fab on him, like in week 1, thinking he was going to be the waiver wire darling of the entire season. I still have him on almost every roster because I had James Conner in so many places, and I still think that there's a chance, thought until maybe even today, that Benny Snell could be their future back for next year. I think I've kind of moved on from that. I think that he's shown that he's probably not going to be the guy for them long term, that he is just going to be a role piece, and they're going to have to figure out what they want to do moving forward if it's not going to be Anthony McFarland who ascends to that kind of mantle. But I really don't think Anthony McFarland kind of has the size speed combination that they want for their bruising back.
Right. Right. And you know, it could have been worse with your Fab. You could have spent it on Ernest Johnson, but that's a conversation for another day. We'll move this a little bit along here. Buffalo at San Francisco, the other Monday Night Football game, the true Monday Night Football game, which I believe the is going to be the early game. The Pittsburgh game is going to be the early game, but with Buffalo, I mean, San Francisco has done well considering all of the shuffling they've done on defense, limiting fantasy points to quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends. They're all top 10. They're top 10 against those positions. So I would still say, you know, Josh Allen and Diggs are in your lines without any question. Just cap the upside a little bit. But I mean, are you digging deep for Zach Moss, JB? Are you digging deep for Devin Singletary? Any of the ancillary pieces, Cole Beasley? Dare I slander his name for Linda, or Gabriel Davis? What are you thinking here?
Not this week, not against San Francisco. We saw them play the Rams really well last week, and I don't know. I think that I saw more Singletary than I would have liked to last week because I did want to get behind Moss and think that, you know, it was going to be his backfield, you know, kind of what we were talking about before with the rookies kind of taking over the backfield. But we saw a lot of Singletary last week, and Singletary actually didn't look so bad. So I'm shying away from that running back situation until I get a little bit more clarity there. And, yeah, I do like Allen. Obviously, you're going to start Allen and Diggs, like you said. But, I mean, maybe Cole Beasley because of the targets. But I don't know. I think San Francisco will be able to neutralize the Gabe Davis deep ball this week.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Gary? I know you're talking about your defense here.
I don't
Speechless.
know. I just don't know what to make of them right now. Like it completely throws everything off. Having Sherman back makes such a big difference, and their defensive line is playing really well, but at the same time, like I don't know, like you want to say that like Buffalo, they're completely different than Goff. Like I think that Allen and his running capabilities, that's one of the things that always throws off the Niners, and that opens up lanes for the other positions. It's not as if they have a run game that the Niners are going to have to worry too much about because Zach Moss and Singletary, you know, they're just okay. So I think that the Niners are going to have some trouble with Beasley, with Diggs, and you know maybe even Gabriel Davis. So I'm a little bit nervous about it. That being said, I do like this line of plus 2.5. Like I think that's close enough relative to the respect that the Niners defense should deserve, but also the Buffalo offense deserves.
I guess I have a little bit more faith in Jason Verrett than you do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Niners. Let me just say, like, if the Niners win this game, we are officially back on the like, holy shit, the Niners could get the wild card spot. So it's a long shot to get there. But there's a world where all this happens and, you know, Kittle comes back and Jimmy comes back. And I actually just think that the Niners' number one piece that I have seen so far this season, it's all three pieces, but Mostert, when he plays, changes everything, I feel like, for that run game. Debo changes everything for the run game and the passing game, and then Kittle changes everything for the run game and the passing game also. So if you can get all three of those guys, they're a really difficult defense to stop, regardless if Ben DiNucci is their backup or you know, Kenton Hinton or whatever the hell his name is, or he's already in the like obscurities of my brain. He's just so terrible.
Well, we'll stick with you, Gary, for this because, you know, you did mention Raheem Mostert. Buffalo does sport Pro Football Focus's worst ranked run defense. So this should be a spot for Raheem Mostert to just absolutely obliterate Buffalo here. And then on the narrow target distribution, Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel should absolutely monopolize that. Could probably get about 70% combined, you know, with the two. So, I mean, is there anybody else that you have any inkling on regarding, you know, Jared McKinnon or anybody else in this offense aside from Mostert, Ayuk, and Debo? Maybe Jordan Reed?
Jordan Reed would be the only other person that I think I'd even consider touching. I forgot that Ayuk's going to be coming off of IR, off of COVID. I just got a massive smile on my face. I feel like I'm starting to blush, even, like, not a joke. I think the Niners are going to win this game. Niners are going to fucking win this game. Dude, let's go. Let's go.
I haven't seen anybody get more excited about Ayuk than Jordan Loop. And Gary, you have now won.
Oh, my God. Dude, just those guys bookended with Mostert. I think we've only seen it like once or twice this season, and that was when Ayuk was like in his first couple games. Didn't really count. I don't know. This is where the Niners are going to gel, and the Niners defense is going to show up. Their defensive lineman, Kinlaw, Hyder, like where the hell did this guy come from? And yet he's been kind of a journeyman, and yet he's showing up. I was texting my buddy who's also a dire Niners fan. I will get off my rant right now because I could keep going, but I'm excited.
You're so fired up right now. I love it.
I went from literally, you guys have no idea. So I have waivers in like my big money league that run at 10 p.m. Central on Wednesdays, and I forgot about them. And I've like texting with my buddy while we've been talking. So sorry, I've been distracted. Super butthurt because we have like 4 guys on COVID. We have DJ Moore and we have Fuller. So I have 6 players in a small bench roster, whatever, figuring this out. And so I was like, then you guys started talking about the Buffalo Niners game. And I was like, man, the Niners are going to lose this game. Like, this sucks. And then all of a sudden it was like, wait, Mostert. Wait, Debo, wait, holy shit, this is gonna fucking happen. Like, let's go. If
the Gary had
playoffs, if Niners make the playoffs, there's no chance there's a small chance that they would make it back to the Super Bowl. But if they did, dude, that would be, oh my God, it would be peak 2021. That's what it would be.
I like how before the show we got a sneak peek into the house of Santa's workshop over there, and just now we got a sneak peek into the mind of exactly what went on in that mind.
No, totally, man. Totally. Sorry,
the roller coaster ride of Gary Haddo.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I should even tell you that I even just got the Steelers defense and I just got Cam Akers in this league, and so my buddy and I are like losing our minds right now. Moving on.
There you go. Let's get into the rare Tuesday night football. This isn't a MAC game. It's it might be. I mean, Dallas at Baltimore. So for the Cowboys, Andy Dalton has been pretty good the last couple games. He's graded out over 70 on Pro Football Focus. He's been, metrics are with him here. So Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz, I'd say they're mid-tier starters of the positions. The real concern we have is Zeke Elliott. Is this current state of the offense ruin him for 2020, JB?
I think a mixture of the current state of the offense and the current state of his mind. Once his best friend went down, you could kind of see the life kind of gets sucked out of him, and he's not playing with the same fire. He knew his season was over as soon as Dak went down. So he's, I don't know. I don't want to put a thought in his mind or say what he is or isn't doing. But to me, it seems as though he kind of quit on this season. He's going through the motions. He's, doing the best to keep himself healthy for next year when Dak's back and they actually have a chance of being a good football team again. I think he's got a defeated mindset, and I think that's what's hurting him on the field.
Yeah, it's really he's been lauded for his consistency, but the last 5 games he's had one double-digit performance, and that was against Minnesota 2 weeks ago. So it's really tough to see. He has 1 touchdown, since Dak went down. So we're really kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel and just playing him on name value, hoping he could do a little bit. But he does have at Baltimore on Tuesday, at Cincinnati, San Francisco, Philadelphia. So it's a tough schedule. Maybe Cincinnati can be a little bit, of a cakewalk there. But it's certainly tough. And we go over to the Baltimore Ravens. So we just watched them. Not being able to do much except for a Trace McSorley deep ball to Marquise Brown. I still refuse to call him Hollywood.
No, it's Englewood now. It's Englewood Brown.
Oh my God. Yeah, maybe. So right now with Baltimore, Mark Andrews and Willie Snead are unlikely to complete their 10-day quarantine by next Tuesday. So right now, if Lamar Jackson comes back, the only guy that's available is Marquise Brown. So can we finally have some confidence, Gary, and start Marquise Brown?
No.
Fuck.
No, it's not happening, man. It's not happening. Also, the Travis McSorley deep ball, for some reason, we were talking about it earlier in the show. I was like, man, that dude is going to be in a porn at some point in his life called Travis McSorley deep ball.
Dude, it was an 11-point spread, and they were down by 12, and they scored that touchdown. So some people got really hurt by that touchdown.
Yeah.
Also, that's the sequel, 11-point spread.
We are never getting monetized on YouTube. Ever. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
But
No, I don't think he's. I don't see a world in which you're going to be able to start him. I just, it was that one, like that was a 70-yard touchdown, and prior to that, he had 15 yards. Granted, it was against the Steelers, but also granted, it was like with their third string quarterback. I just, no, I'm not. It's not something I want to touch.
If there was ever a world, it would be next week if Mark Andrews doesn't play.
That's true.
Yeah, he's not going to be able to clear that 10-day quarantine. I mean, he just doesn't have the days there. So I will just say this just for transparency. I have Marquise Brown at wide receiver 24 next week.
Yeah, but of course you do.
I'm in on him
I
still.
can dig him as a top 30 next week with his quarterback out, with no Andrews. They're going to force feed him the ball because they have to against that Dallas secondary. I could put him in the top 30. I don't like it. I'll hold my nose while I do it, but I could put him in the top 30.
I don't feel good about it putting him in like redraft, certainly. But I would probably, as like my flex or multiple flexes as my last flex. That's about all I'd feel good about starting Marquise Brown in. I mean, it's gross, but he has a great schedule coming up. So that's what people are holding their hopes on, is that, this beautiful playoff schedule, Marquise Brown and Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews, they have to do something, right? But
no.
Do you think that Lamar plays? It's a very important question, near and dear to my heart.
Yes.
Right now.
He can play.
Yeah.
He can play. Mark Andrews won't be able to make it. Willie Snead won't be able to make it. So it really, if Lamar doesn't play, no thanks to Hollywood Brown. I mean, they probably won't go back to RG3 if Lamar can't start. They'll probably go to McSorley. So moderately interesting, but still, I mean, as bad as the Dallas defense has been against the pass, I don't think you can really start anybody if Trace McSorley, is the starting quarterback.
I think it'll be Lamar. I'm pretty confident it'll be Lamar.
Yeah. I think if they have to move that game to Wednesday, after the Westminster Dog Show, I mean, maybe, or whatever, it's a Christmas Charlie Brown or whatever show they want to put on. I don't know. Bad Santa 2 rerun. I don't know. But so that's that's the slate here. We didn't give you a proper introduction. I know we kind of did it in the middle, JB. So tell us where we can find you on the World Wide Web, and we will get out of here.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at FantasyCoachJB. I write a weekly article on Razzball.com. I do a podcast with Wes on the Fantasy Impact Today network. The Fantasy Magnet Show comes out every Friday. And then, of course, the Fantasy Besties with Kevin, the rest of the Besties on Monday nights.
Yeah,
I love it.
Absolutely.
It makes me smile every time you say it.
It makes me smile when I say it, too.
Born out of the
group chat makes me smile all day long. Just the shenanigans that go on in that group chat. It's awesome. And that's why we came up with the idea of doing that live pod, is because the five of us just talk all the time, whether it be fantasy or Jordan Loop's father's fishing shows that he's on, and just random stuff. Yeah, Anti-Coop. I mean, we just had to put us out there and let other people interact with us. So it's been great so far. We've done it 2 weeks now, and I think it's just getting better every week.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Annie Coop, by the way, Gary, is a diehard Rams fan. So I didn't think those existed, but here we are.
That's tough.
She was disappointed last week.
Yep. So I'll give a shout out to Auntie Coop. Auntie Coop. So, that's Fighting Chance Live here. Gary, anything else before we get out of here?
No, man. JB, it was a pleasure meeting you. It's always interesting because I don't really know most of the people by face from a lot of the people that we bring on. And it's fantastic talking with you. Obviously talked for over a year now on Twitter and whatnot. So thank you so much for coming on. It's awesome. And hopefully we'll get to have you back on whenever you're available.
I'd love that, man. It was great to be on. I appreciate you guys reaching out to me, and thanks for the opportunity. It was great shooting the breeze with you guys and talking some fantasy football.
Hell yeah. Thanks, man.
Always fun, my friend. I'll see you in a few minutes in the group chat and on Mondays for the Fantasy Besties. But again, I'm Kevin Tompkins of FightingChanceFantasy.com, as well always Gary, also FightingChanceFantasy.com. Tune in next week. We'll be back for week 14. We'll do a preview. Maybe we'll do a little bit something. I got to talk to about Gary, but I'll kind of put him on the spot a little bit. But yeah, I'm going to shut up. Let's get out of here. I'm Kevin Tompkins, Gary Hadow, Jared Berry, Fantasy Coach JB on Twitter. Have a great night, everybody.
Peace.